We do the mornings here at the Voice of College Football as well. You typically see us on Wednesday night, on Thursday night, but here we are. Thanks to Brad Tejada from Kane's Insight dropping by to lay down some knowledge on Miami football and give us a recruiting and fall camp update. Brad, how you doing today?
Mark, what's going on, man? I appreciate you having me on this great Saturday. As we know, Miami Hurricanes is gearing up for another scrimmage today. I hope nothing but the best. I want to make sure we're injury free today. But yeah, man, we're going to be talking some Miami Hurricanes football, and obviously a lot of recruiting going on with a lot of the football games starting out yesterday.
Folks, you know the drill. For the next 50 or 55 minutes, leave those comments and questions there in the live chat. We will pass them on to Brad, and I may have a thing or two to say as well. All right, let's take care of the news of the day. Unfortunately, another running back down, Don Chaney. This just came out here in the last day, and then we have Trevante Citizen a few days ago. So a couple running backs down. What do we know at this point? I know it's not going to be extensive in regards to a diagnosis. It never is with college football players, but what do we know at this point?
Yeah, Mark. Obviously, we got the news about a week or so ago about Trevante Citizen, high-profile recruit that we got this past class that we had a lot of high hopes for. He went down with a significant injury, I believe, during the first scrimmage. There hasn't been any official details yet that the school has let out as far as how long it would be, but it seems like it could be, injured the whole season. That he could potentially be out. From everything I've heard. That's one little low blow. But as we know, the running back room is one of those position groups where we have continued to stack talent. And then, of course, you mentioned a guy in Don Chaney who just came back from an injury this past year. So we were hoping, with a fully healthy Don Chaney, everything we've been hearing in the offseason, the progression that he's been going through. He got dinged up as well. From what I've heard, it has to do with the hip. He could potentially be out for at least mid football season. But there are some, things behind the scenes that say he could be coming back sooner than that. But there's no details on him as well. But I mean, when you look at this running back room, you still got to go running back by committee. And you still got some big time players back there. I think we can all agree that Jalen Rooster Knighton is going to be geared up for a tremendous big year for the Miami Hurricanes, with the type of playing style that he's going to be under, and Josh Gaddis. I think he's prone to have a very big year. And then you look at the transfer running back and Henry Parrish Jr., local native from Goulds, Florida, went to Christopher Columbus, played under the running backs coach and Kevin Smith. So he already has familiarity with the running back system and how everything needs to work. And you need some running backs that can not only run the ball, catch the ball out the backfield, but can also, block when needed. And these are two guys that have definitely shown that in the past year or so. So I think those two alone is going to be, something that you're going to have to look for. This running back room last year, your leading rusher was Jalen Knighton with only like 550 or 60 yards, I believe. And right behind him was Cam Harris at only 400. You compare that to, a Josh Gaddis offense last year at Michigan that had a running back with over 1,300 yards, and their second running back was just shy under 1,000 yards. So Josh Gaddis and this offense that he's going to be bringing to the table can definitely show you that you can go with two running backs and absolutely get over 1,000 yards apiece. And that's what I'm looking for in this offense. I want to see two guys. Even though we just said we got two guys down, I think the two guys I mentioned can easily hit those marks, whether that's all-purpose yards or just rushing alone.
Yeah, we talked about it, you and I, a few months ago, and we've talked about it here on the channel a number of times, that it appears as though Josh Gaddis and what he did at Michigan, considering the personnel, is in a lot of ways similar, in a lot of ways different, but in regards to the status of the personnel on offense, very similar to Miami. And then, of course, with Mario Cristobal, very much in line with what Jim Harbaugh does, being offense, run game between the tackle-oriented guys, and then things work off of that. That it being a good fit for the offense that Josh Gaddis moves over from Michigan to Miami, that seems like a good fit in regards to what Mario Cristobal wants to do on offense. And yeah, Hassan Haskins, 1,300 yards, Blake Corum, almost 1,000 for Michigan. So with the running back talent in this room, despite the loss of 2. It's a good thing they went out and got Henry Parrish from Ole Miss. So, Brad, I know it's difficult to assess this. You're going to know better through the first 2 games of the season when Miami shouldn't be challenged yet on the scoreboard, but obviously working through things. In regards to the skill sets of these backs, what they do well, what they've done in the past, do you have a feel for how they're going to be used and who may get the most carries and what that distribution looks like?
You know, when you looked at this running back room before these injuries, right, I think one of the key things was Jalen Knighton, being able to utilize him a little bit more with the flexibility of having the depth that we had at the time. I think Jalen Knighton was a guy last year where he was getting heavily relied on in situations where I don't think he needed to, if we had the depth there. And when you looked at what our room was, you know, a week or 2 ago, we felt very confident that someone in Jalen Knighton may not need as many touches, and he can, you know, be versatile. You know, you could line him up in special teams at kick return, punt return. You could line him up as slot receiver at times, just to have 2 or 3 running backs on the field at once. But now with these 2 running back situations going down, that kind of pushes some things back in the special teams department, in my opinion, where you can't really have that flexibility of now you're, you know, key number 1 back in Jalen Knighton, in my opinion. Throwing him out at kick return or punt return may not be an option anymore. But I think at the end of the day, you have to look at the game plan of what Josh Gaddis is going to be bringing to the table. He's going to keep it balanced. Although we named 2 running backs that, you know, hit almost over 1,000 yards apiece, they also had some wide receivers where we talk about the wide receiver room, right? And who's going to be that number 1 guy, who's going to take the lead and be the man in charge like we've seen in the past couple of years. It's always been that transfer portal guy. Well, when you look at the Michigan offense last year, they didn't really have a wide receiver that was that number 1 guy. I believe their number 1 wide receiver last year only had 600 receiving yards. And when you talk about a team that ended up 12-2, very balanced attack with just over 440 total offensive yards, these are the type of things that the check marks that you're going to want to see, because when you progress that type of style of offense and the caliber of players and the personnel that Gaddis had at Michigan, and you translate that to the Miami Hurricanes, the personnel is a lot more, you know, upside, in my opinion. I think Tyler Van Dyke is a lot more better than Cade McNamara, in my opinion. When you look at the quarterback play alone, I think our running backs can do just as good as what the Michigan running backs did last year. And then when you talk about the wide receiver group, I don't think you necessarily have to have a wide receiver 1, although I think everyone is looking for that guy. But the second leading receiver in a Josh Gaddis offense, not just at Michigan, but in prior years, was a tight end. And when you look at the Miami Hurricanes, we are very heavy in that position group. And Josh Gaddis has shown, you know, just in the spring game alone, he's going to be very comfortable using not just 1, but 2 tight end sets. And I think this is going to be a big year for Will Mallory, Elijah Arroyo, even a young guy in Jaleel Skinner coming out of IMG, which a school we'll be talking about a little later in recruiting. These are going to be 3 guys alone in an offense where you're going to be looking at a lot of receiving going to those guys as well.
Got Brad Tejada on the line from Canes Insight. Get on over there to Canes Insight. Check out Brad and the rest of this staff there. Brad, let us know best ways to find you, everybody else, everything that you're doing, both with the podcasting and the writing at Canes Insight.
Yeah, man, with Canes Insight, man, we do just about anything and everything. And anyone who follows Miami Hurricanes football in the past, as you know, the dynamic duo in the past of Peter Rees and D Money, that those podcasts have now came back. Peter Rees has joined back with Canes Insight, so that's always big news. So you got podcasts with them. You got the guys over at Canes Insight YouTube channel every Wednesday doing their things as well. And then you could catch us on canesinsight.com, where all of us, you know, are writing up articles daily, weekly, about some of the best recruits and players around the nation, along with our beloved football team. And then you could catch me on Twitter at Tejada Brad there below, where, you know, I like to tweet some information from time to time. But that's where I kind of do a lot of my fan interaction anytime someone has a question.
Brad, while we've got you on the line talking running backs, you sat down with Cam Harris recently, right?
No, that was Peter. That was Peter Rees and D Money. Yep, they sat down with Cam Harris, former guy under FRM, that first round management with Peter Rees. You know, running back we had last year. He's been seeing some very good things with the program, man. It's just all about staying in touch with the former players. And I think Mario Cristobal and the staff is doing a tremendous job at, having a welcome arms of not just, players in the last year or so, but pretty much guys in the last 15, 20 years that want to come back to the program and see what it's all about and be interactive to the kids as well on the football field. I think it's been a very great opportunity for some of these guys.
Brad, outside of the injuries, have you been able to pick up anything from the first half to 3 weeks of camp? I know it's difficult to get information out of there. It is for every college football commentator, analyst, writer across the country. But anything that you've caught that of note?
I mean, first and foremost, just starting with the quarterback position, Tyler Van Dyke seems to be the real deal. He's picking up right where he left off. He seems to be, not only doing well on the football field, but as far as, in the locker room and keeping up with these guys and having everyone be accountable. I think you're seeing it all throughout the football team. Every position, every player on the team seems to have the same message, the same tone. So that's what it takes to build a good program. You need that culture. It seems like the message is getting, throughout the football team. But as far as Tyler Van Dyke, he's being a huge leader on this football team. And I think that's some growth in him that I like to see. Someone that's a lot more vocal. He knows he's that guy. And I think he's in for a tremendous year. I think we can only go as far as he can take us, in my opinion. I think someone like Jake Garcia is going to bring a lot to the table as well. But I think Tyler Van Dyke is obviously going to be the engine to the train of this football season. And then running backs, with 2 guys going down, you still got the 2 guys I mentioned. In the wide receiver group, again, that's been the biggest question mark all offseason. Is who's going to be that number 1 wide receiver. We all know Xavier Restrepo is the go-to guy for Tyler Van Dyke. Keyshawn Smith seems to be doing his thing as well. You got a guy in Jacoby George, Romello Brinson making some noise. And then the tight end group is pretty stacked, but it's been the trenches, man. The trenches has been what seems to be, the noise of all offseason. It seems like a lot of guys are moving around, especially on that defensive side of the front. We're 8 to 10 guys deep to where that there is no starting rotation. It's going to be, week to week basis because we just have so many talented players that can play multiple positions. Guys you got from the transfer portal. I think the big key has been competition. Every position group has been, full out compete. I mean, you got 3 safeties and Cameron Kitchens, Avante Williams, and James Williams that you're going to see at times be on the field at once. But as in late, those guys got to rotate as well. So you're seeing a lot of heavy rotation where guys are going to have to step up.
Number 1 concern on this team, either side of the ball.
As far as the offense, I would say that tackle position still. I think if you go down, obviously with football, as we know, late injuries happen. I think if a tackle was to go down throughout this football season, I think that could be something for me to be a little worried about. I just don't feel comfortable in some of these big time matchups to where if you're down another tackle, that's where it could hurt you. I think any other position group on the offensive side of the ball, I think we're okay with if an injury was to happen. As far as the defensive side of the ball, I just want to see what happens with that linebacker position. I want to see who steps up, who becomes that alpha dog. As crazy as it sounds, Mark, I think Corey Flagg got a lot of hate last year. Whether it's his size, some of the miscues that he was on a lot of highlighted plays, but he led the team in tackles last year with 60 tackles. He, was the second leader or actually, I believe he comes back as the leading sack leader on the football team. Not a defensive end, not Jafari Harvey, not Harrison Hunt. It's Corey Flagg who comes back this year leading the team in sacks this past year. I believe it was him and DeAndre Johnson, who obviously isn't with the team anymore. But Corey Flagg, your linebacker who got most of the hate, was second in sacks last year. So he's your sack leader coming back from last year to this year. Obviously, that won't be the case anymore. And then he was second in interceptions on the team, tied with 1. So, I mean, a guy in Corey Flagg who may not even be the starting middle linebacker this year was your leader in almost a lot of statistic categories on a defense that wasn't very good last year. So your defense alone is going to be very improved to where that linebacker position, it's very wide open. You look at a guy in transfer, Caleb Johnson. You got someone in Wayman Steed who's finally healthy coming back, and then Corey Flagg as well. You got some other young guys that are going to be coming in there as well. And Gilbert Frierson's going to be playing a lot of star position and linebacker. So that's another name to look out for. But you got a lot of guys who are going to be moving around a lot. And that is unfortunately, going to clear out some space for a guy like Marcus Clark, who, as we know, just made a transfer out from the Miami Hurricanes, Orlando native from Winter Park. I expect him to probably go JUCO or maybe go to UCF or Florida, stay closer to home. I believe he just had a kid recently, so I know he may want to be closer to the family. So best wishes to him, but we're stacked in that position.
In addition to the top tackle total with 60, as you mentioned, 5 more than Wayman Steed, and you went through the other numbers, 7 tackles for loss. That pretty much ranked right, not first on the team, but all sorts of guys were within 7 or 8 right there. So he was right there with DeAndre Johnson and Leonard Taylor and Zach McLeod and Jafar Harvey with 7 tackles for loss too. So Corey Flagg filled up the box score in a number of ways there. Brad, looking at the 23 recruiting class, Connor Liu, the last commit about a week ago, not even, August 15th. And so we've got the 9th rated class according to the 247 rankings with 17 hard commits. What's the latest brewing there?
Yeah, man, the second wave of what the coaching staff has been naming it, hopefully we'll be starting here shortly. But you got some big name targets that Miami's still going after. Obviously, when you look at the offensive line position, you still got Samson Pancake Kanula, who is one of the top tackles in the nation. When you turn on his tape, I mean, he's a future first-round pick, similar to Francis Maigoa. And these are two guys who have been talking, off air a lot, whether it's football related or Miami Hurricane related. Those two guys have a very good relationship. It seems to be a Miami Hurricane, Michigan State battle with him right now. Who knows if Alabama gets in the mix, but I have a feeling that Bama may be going towards Monroe Freeling, who's also another target Miami was going after. But I think Sampson, if you could land a guy in Sampson and pair him with Francis Maigoa, you got potentially the top 2 tackles in the nation on the same recruiting class. So that's looking good for Miami. And then as we know, a lot of high school football games were played yesterday. And the biggest game to watch, just as far as a recruiting aspect, was the IMG First Venice game yesterday. It wasn't much of a football game, unfortunately. IMG kind of blew out Venice very early in the game. But, there was about 8 to 10 Miami Hurricane either commits or future targets in that football game. And, after the football game, Damon Wilson, who's a 5-star defensive end out of Venice, was getting a lot of to the U comments from a lot of the IMG players. I believe 6 is what Gabby Urrutia from 24/7 reported, that I believe 6 IMG players was pretty much like, hey, man, Damon Wilson, you need to come to the U. So there was a lot of recruiting for Miami Hurricanes going on. You had Samuel Mpemba, who was another, top defensive end target that Miami's going after. It seems to be a Miami-Georgia battle for him at the moment. He was a standout player along with, Jaden Wayne, who just transferred from Washington to IMG. He was a standout player as well, who's a Miami Hurricane commit. And then you had Antonio Tripp, who transferred as well. He was only at IMG for 12 days, is I believe what he tweeted yesterday. He's been at IMG for 12 days and ended up starting on the offensive line and played very well. Him and Francis Maigoa seemed to be a great little duo right there on the offensive line. And you had some, 2024 guys that Miami's going after that played extremely well, whether that's Jarrett Gibson, running back, that's, between Georgia, Florida, and Miami at the moment. And then Ernest Willer, 2024 defensive end. He's a high 4-star. I believe he's going to be one of the top-rated guys in the nation when it's all said and done. He had a bunch of tremendous plays. He had a pick 6 at defensive end as a junior, yesterday, and it looked very, very great out there. That's another name to watch. And Desmond Ricks as well, 2024 corner. So just that name alone, I named about 8 to 9 guys that Miami's all going after, and these are all top players at their position groups, Mark. So that was, one game. You also had Damari Brown at American Heritage, who is a cornerback Miami's going after. He recently said that he will be official visiting Miami September 23rd. So that's good news for Miami. And then Jaylen Brown, there's a bunch of guys that Miami Hurricanes are still in contact with that are committed to other schools, like Jaylen Brown, who expressed the other day that even though he is an LSU commit, Miami Hurricanes is still talking to him on a daily, weekly basis. Same thing with Mark Fletcher, as we know, one of the top running back in the nation in the 2023 class here. He's currently committed to the Ohio State Buckeyes, but Miami Hurricanes are in contact with him on a daily basis, like he said. And that's a place that he puts, close to the vest. He knows that the Miami Hurricanes are right there behind him every step of the way. And that's a name to watch out for, in my opinion, is the Mark Fletcher scenario. I know he's Ohio State Buckeye commit, but if Miami can do their job on the football field this year and win football games and be one of the top ACC teams that we all expect them to be this year, he's going to be one of the big names that I think Miami needs to look out for.
We appreciate super chats coming in from Leon Hurricanes. Thank you so much for that, Leon. Go Canes. And Ramon Rodriguez, thank you so much for the super sticker. Appreciate the support right there. Get on over to Canes Insight. We got Brad Tejeda on the line. Does amazing work. We get Brad on here as much as we possibly can. Brad's got a ton going on. And again, Canes Insight needs to be a destination for all you Miami fans. So get there on a regular basis. 17 hard commits. Do we expect that to be the typical 22-23 when it's all said and done?
It's going to be tough because I think, again, it all comes down to the football season, in my opinion, Mark. I think there's going to be a lot of guys in play late in the game, whether it's because they're the 5-star caliber guy that's going to just wait till the end of the recruiting cycle to make his decision, or, again, going back to some guys that are currently committed to other programs where all they want to see is Miami prove it on the football field, where if they beat a Texas A&M, if they beat a Clemson Tigers, those are going to be the tipping point games that could get you a Hakeem Williams or a Jordan Hall or a Deshaun Johnson quarterback position, a Damon Wilson, even an Andy Jean, who is obviously a commit to the Florida Gators right now. These are all guys that I think once the football season is played, if we get our job done and we do the right things, I think we're in play for a lot of guys. And I didn't even mention Jerrion Dickey, who is one of the top wide receivers in the nation, who I believe Miami is in a very good spot for at the moment, even though he's an Oregon Duck commit and Oregon Duck fans seem very confident, along with Jerrion Dickey, saying all the right things when he is getting interviewed on Oregon, which he should. I think as long as Miami does what they need to do, there's going to be a lot of big-time players that can add to that class. And I think you could potentially get, to that 28 mark if Miami does everything they're supposed to do on the football field. I think at the end of the day, you have to win football games. That's what's going to create the second wave, as we call it, to be a tremendous, huge effect for the Miami Hurricane program moving forward. Because when you look at that 2024 class, you're already in very good shape for some of the top players at their positions in the nation and also in your backyard. You got JoJo Trader and Jeremiah Smith, 2 wide receivers locally here in Miami, that are obviously huge Miami Hurricane leans at the moment, whether it's Miami Hurricanes or Ohio State. And then you got TJ Capers, who's the top linebacker in the nation, right out of Christopher Columbus. So you obviously got multiple coaches on the staff that are tied to that situation as well. So you feel very confident with some of the relationships that you have already built and continue to build, that as long as this translates into wins, a lot of this stuff is going to come very easy.
Got a question coming in from Willie. Willie, appreciate you being here. Leonard Taylor, does he take a step back and be allowed to fully develop with all the transfer up front?
Is that the great Willie Williams?
I don't know. Willie Williams of the Pittsburgh Steelers, meaning? I don't know. But, asking about Leonard Taylor.
So with Leonard Taylor, I think he's a guy where I think the staff has kind of pushed him to limits where I don't know if he's necessarily been to yet. I think he's going through a lot of growing pains, and that's a good thing and a bad thing, obviously. But I think right now he's showing to himself, and he's also showing to the staff that he can reach limits that he's never even expected to. I think this is a guy where obviously him at the high school level, he was just bigger and better and more dominant than everyone else, similar to Nesta Silvera. But once they hit the college program, you're kind of on the same playing field, if not, a step behind in some cases when you're lining up against certain teams. And I think Leonard Taylor, once he gets in the groove of things, he's going to be one of the most dominant players in the nation, in my opinion. I think what helps with this program is you have multiple guys that are going to be able to switch and line up in different positions. I believe Leonard Taylor has lined up on defensive end in certain cases as well for the Miami Hurricanes this offseason already. So depending on the scheme and the way, we're rushing certain teams and the attack that we're going after, you're going to see Leonard Taylor move in different directions on this defensive line front, and it's just going to create havoc for your offensive line. And I think it's a good thing for a guy like Leonard Taylor, where you don't have to essentially lean on someone like him to be that dominant guy. You let him kind of, ease his way into things. And him being only a sophomore right now, I think that's a very good sign, and I expect very big things for Leonard Taylor.
BGPO Football Funk, Clemson fan. We read all the super chats. I think there's been one, maybe two in the history of all our channels where I've not read the super chat because it was, something that could not be stated. But other than that, we read them regardless, Brad. So cover your ears. We got Clemson fan DeAndre saying Miami will choke as always. But that's the super chat coming in from DeAndre. Appreciate the super chat.
Also see Streeter's in the building, man. Shout out to Streeter. If you guys are watching Footballville Nation, man, they do some of the best work, if not the best in the country, man, especially locally and South Florida. They got their ears to the streets and to the football fields, 24/7. So make sure you guys go watch them as well, man. They do excellent work.
Shane is asking about Romello Brinson. You ran through the wide receiver core, but he's specifically asking about Romello Brinson and that star. To become the star wide receiver for the Miami team this year.
Man, I think Romello Brinson, man, he has all the tools and intangibles to be that guy. I think there's a few guys on this roster that could potentially be that number one wide receiver. I think the key is they got to be utilized in the right way. And I think with Josh Gaddis' offense, you're going to finally see guys, get a little bit more playing time, put them in the right situations. And I think Romello Brinson, him and a few other guys, they should have got a lot more reps and playing time last year because when they did, get in the football game, they made some highlight plays, especially Romello himself. But I think Mr. Zero, local native out of Miami Northwestern, I expect a very big outcome from him this year. I think he has a lot of potential overall. I think he could be a great wide receiver for Miami. And again, man, all these guys are young. They still have a lot of growth, a lot of maturity. But I think they're leading by example. I think with the wide receiver room, there isn't one dominant guy in that room. So I think, the reins is for the taking. It's who wants it. And, with a guy at 6'2", almost pushing that 195 mark now, he's put a lot more weight on in the offseason, which is what we like to see. I think he's got a very big year on his hands, hopefully.
For everybody correcting me in the chat on who Willie Williams might be. Now, I know Brad's always forward-thinking recruiting. Willie Williams, is there a Willie Williams on the scene in recruiting?
Right? One of the best ever.
But I said Pittsburgh Steelers. Folks, I know what I'm talking about. 1995 Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback, Willie Williams. Go check out a Super Bowl roster from 1995. Willie Williams. All right.
I'm talking about the linebacker, from Carroll City.
Yeah. I got you. So let's go to Jake Garcia. I know it's difficult to tell because he hasn't played meaningful snaps against good teams in meaningful situations at this level. But in regards to the talent, it coming into his situation in college football, he was rated higher than Tyler Van Dyke, wasn't he?
Yeah, I believe he was. Yep.
Yeah. So I know you don't want to think about it, but how much confidence would you have in Jake Garcia stepping into a situation with a game on the line?
Oh, very, very confident. Again, that this is, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I think only the tackle position on the offensive side of the ball is the only position I'm really worried about, to where if the injury was to go down, I would be a little concerned on who would be that next guy up. Even with the quarterback position, as great as Tyler Van Dyke is, if he was to somehow get injured throughout the football year, which I hope obviously doesn't happen, Jake Garcia is ready to take over. He's a guy that has been in crazy situations. This is a young man that I believe has transferred 3 different times to high schools, and ended up winning a state championship. And he knows what it takes to win a football team. He's a leader in a locker room. He knows how to take over a football game. And he's definitely underrated when it comes to the athleticism that he carries as well. And he's a winner, man. That's what I like the most. That's something you can't teach in a quarterback, is being a winner, a true grinder. And he's a guy that loves football at the end of the day, and he has a great relationship with a lot of players, on the football team. And I think his time is definitely coming soon, whether that's sooner or later. Obviously, first game of the year is against Bethune-Cookman, so I expect Jake Garcia and Jakari Brown to get a ton of snaps as well of that week one. And anyone, that is around the area, whether you're 3 hours away, 5 or 6 hours away like myself, you got to make it to that first game of the year, man. We got to support Mario Cristobal and the new Miami Hurricanes, because if we want to get back to the promised land, we got to fill up that Hard Rock Stadium. So I expect a lot of Cane fans week one.
Shane says that TVD would not be the starter if Jake Garcia did not get hurt last year. Well, we will never know. Kane Corso, mark my words, no pun intended, the 2024 national championship will be a rematch of the 2002 national championship. That's going way down the road here. 2024 making national championship game predictions. Wow.
And on top of that, what's even crazy on that? Mistake me if I'm wrong, but if that happens, Kane, I believe the 2024 championship is in Miami, so you would be playing at home. I think.
I'll
I
give it a
could be
look.
wrong.
I will give it a look as you mull this one over, Brad. We got Chuck C chiming in. Chuck C, good to see you right there. We miss you on the live shows, but we know that you're here to support. Thank you so much for that, Chuck. Thanks, Mark. Glad that I caught a live show. I'm looking forward to seeing the defense this season. There seems to be more confidence on that side of the ball, at least right now.
Absolutely, Chuck. I mean, when you look at the defensive side of the ball alone, you got so many guys that are coming back on this defense. It seems like a lot of freshmen or sophomore guys that we relied very heavily on last year are going to be key parts to this Miami defense, along with a bunch of the transfer guys that we got in the transfer portal. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to coaching. The coaching, the developing, and the scheme that you're going to see this year compared to years past is going to be night and day. I mean, you look at the defensive line position group alone. I mentioned earlier we're about 8 to 10 deep with ease. But then you look at the coaches. You got 3 coaches alone just on the defensive line group, and Jason Taylor, Coach Rod White, and Coach Joe Salavea, that are able to mix and match all of these different types of players that we have on this football team, to where we're going to be able to scheme up and game plan depending on who we play throughout a football game. And then, even if those guys are kind of questioning themselves and saying, hey, are these the right 4 guys we need to line up at this time? You got a guy in Coach Steele behind them that could kind of, check them and see, all right, this is what I'm running this game. Let's see if that matches up with what you 3 guys are saying. And then you got a guy in, Coach Alonzo Highsmith, who's, a great developer and an analyst in the football world, to where he's able to overlook pretty much every situation possible on this football team from a week-to-week basis. And I think that's an amazing asset that Miami Hurricanes have on the football field that people aren't talking about as well. Alonzo Highsmith is going to be able to bring to this table, especially behind the scenes.
So we've got the national championship game slated for Los Angeles this year, 2023 season in Houston. And then if I can make anything out of this, why don't sites just list things, 2023, write paragraphs and paragraphs. Las Vegas hosts at the conclusion of the 24 season. It will be the 11th different city to host a college football championship game, joining all these other cities that they're listing. So I don't see Miami in the next three. I see LA this year.
Maybe it's
Houston,
2026.
and Vegas.
I think it's 2025 or 2026.
25. There
25.
It is.
I know it's when we play Florida. We play Florida that year.
South Beach in 25. All right. So we got the next 3 or 4 lined up. Yeah, I guess it would be the next 4. Interesting. Yeah, on South Beach in 25. Okay. All right. Got a troll in here we'll deal with. So we have, folks, no issue with anybody coming in here trolling and talking trash to an extent. If you want to say that Ken Dorsey sucks or whatever you want to say it once. Say it once. Make your point. That's fine. Whatever. If you copy and paste it like 5,000 times, then we'll get rid of you. All right. What do you think of the Florida situation in regards to a Miami series with the Gators? How important is it to you?
I think it was long overdue, Mark. I think this is something that should have happened a long time ago. Me personally, I would love to play Florida almost every year, if not every other year at that. It was looking like Miami could possibly be, in the SEC. But now with, some of the Big Ten stuff talks and, how the money situation is lining up for that and, being able to not only pay the school, but be able to give the players a little bit of money as well. I think, that looks like a very good situation that could help the Miami Hurricanes moving forward. So I think the Big Ten may be where Miami may be going in the future. But I think, there's still a year or two for things to play out. We'll see what happens. But I think at the end of the day, Miami's got to produce on the football field. You got to start winning football games, and you got to start being dominant on a daily, weekly basis for them to get back to where they need to be and have the opportunity to kind of, create their own path. I think people forget that Miami was an independent school for most of their college football life, right? For the Miami Hurricanes, they have played most of their seasons have been independent. And obviously Notre Dame's the only independent school left. But if Miami could, come back to dominance and be that U again, very quickly, obviously, a lot of things have to happen. They could create a buzz and create a Notre Dame type of culture to where the U could have their own network. And I think at the end of the day, you got to win football games.
So, yeah, you go the realignment route. I want to get your opinion on that, because to talk about Miami in the same sentence as the Big Ten a few years ago would have been ridiculous, because we all had a mindset of geography when we looked at conferences, because that's the way they started. And that's the way they've progressed through 150 years of college football. But that's still part of the process, but it's not the number one priority or number 2 or number 3. The Big Ten's gone to Los Angeles and New York, and we may see other moves that completely defy geography. We see West Virginia completely detached from the rest of the Big 12. So if it makes sense from a financial standpoint, from a football standpoint, from an academic standpoint, depending on the priorities of the conference and the schools involved, then it's going to happen. And I think it's intriguing to think of the Big Ten has almost everything when it comes to football tradition, football prestige, media markets, Cleveland, Chicago, Pittsburgh, on and on, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, etc., Indianapolis, and now Los Angeles and New York. And then on top of that, great academic institutions, which Miami would fit right in. The Big Ten's pretty much got everything except a Florida footprint, a footprint in the South where most of the players are. So I would think that the Big Ten would love to get some combination of Miami first and foremost, but tag team a Miami / Florida State, or a Miami, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina with 4, something like that.
Yeah, I think it would renew a lot of old rivalries too, in my opinion, and it would get some definitely matchups going where I think it would definitely favor Miami in a lot of ways, to where our athleticism and our speed would definitely come in favor when we're playing a lot of these Big Ten teams, and it just opens up the footprint of the recruiting aspect alone as well. You now have a coaching staff that has already shown that the footprint alone of recruiting for Miami now has gone all throughout the United States. You're not just talking about 2 or 3 states that we're going after. We're going after states all across the nation. And if you were to play every single year in the Big Ten, that footprint, you're going to be visiting those schools and those states that you're nitpicking the great 5-stars out of on a weekly basis. So that would help a lot with recruiting, and then being able to get the aspect and the feeling of watching the Miami Hurricanes very close, to home as well. So I think that would help with recruiting. But again, Mark, what if I told you, I mean, this is obviously a big if, all caps with the quotes behind it. But what if I told you the Miami Hurricanes cared so much about the football program that they poured in so much money to where they don't necessarily need to reach like other programs and figure out what conference they need to go to because of the money situation? What if I told you that if the Miami Hurricanes got out of the ACC this year and either won the ACC or won the Coastal, almost got to a playoff game this year, and then got to the playoffs next year or won the championship, you're now looking at a program in just 2 years that has turned itself around on the football field, has also turned itself around off the football field, caring about the program enough, building the staff, putting the money, having the organizations, whether it's the new facilities, the new staff, the new players, alone collectively, to where now they're in a position to where they can almost in a sense be independent and say, hey, we already have the new facilities. We already have the head athletic director. We already have the coaching staff. We already have the players. We're now looking from a Notre Dame almost aspect where we have everything right here in Coral Gables now. We can build our own network. We could build our own way, our own path, to where if we want to go to the SEC or the Big Ten, as long as we could produce wins, we're in a different situation in a different time where Miami could definitely produce a lot more for any conference that they end up going to, as long as they could be the old U again. Because I think with in this day and age, Miami, if they catch fire, they're one of the programs that can heavily be in Alabama very quickly in this day and age of college football, because at the end of the day, people hate Miami being good, because they know when Miami is good, there's no other program that gets talked about like the University of Miami.
All right. Plenty of conversation, of course, in the chat concerning stay in the ACC, leave the ACC, go to the SEC, go to the Big Ten, don't go to the Big Ten, don't go to the SEC, go independent. Maybe we should focus a show on that. Good stuff here. Brad Tejeda, of course, Canes Insight. Again, Brad, everything that you've got available there, kind of lay the land for everyone so they know where to go.
Yeah, man, you can find us on canesinside.com. We got a ton of articles, ton of podcasts, ton of YouTube videos that we do on a daily, weekly basis. We got a ton of guys over there that do amazing, great work. Like I mentioned earlier, Peter Rees has rejoined Canes Insight as well. So he's doing a weekly podcast with D Money. So make sure you stay tuned with that, along with some of the great work that we do on the YouTube show. Chris, Steve-O, and the gang over there on Wednesdays. And then we drop articles from time to time, whether it's me, Stephen Adams, and a bunch of the other guys.
You mentioned recruiting with the Big Ten, and I kind of led into it as being not a down spot for the Big Ten, because the Big Ten recruits better than any conference except the SEC. Recruits and produces NFL players higher than the other 3 conferences. But Ohio State's pretty much the only team in the Big Ten that goes to Florida and gets high-level players, top-tier players. It's kind of difficult for everybody else to do that. Michigan, to a certain extent, I would love to see, because you mentioned Miami going to the Midwest. Of course, the Midwest does not have the wealth of players that Florida does, but there's 4 and 5 stars all over the place, and especially in the Midwest and Ohio and other states. I think of it more from the standpoint of those Big Ten teams, a Penn State, a Wisconsin, some of the higher level Big Ten teams, aside from Ohio State, going to Florida, and how much they would benefit from the Big Ten being in Florida and having schools in Florida, and not thinking of it so much as how much would Miami benefit from going to the Midwest and filling out a roster with offensive linemen and other positions that they may be able to attract, that kids in the Midwest might love to go to Miami, play football, live in Miami, and still have that connection to the Big Ten and be able to, travel to nearby sites for their families to see them play.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I mean, it goes back to this new coaching staff and what Mario Cristobal has built in a very short amount of time. Because even with this situation that we're talking about with the Big Ten, possibly we were going after some of the high caliber guys that ended up going to the Penn States, to the Michigans, to the Ohio States. It was just they didn't fit the Miami Hurricanes because of the scheme, the type of players we were going after. We didn't have the trench bullies, the Wisconsin type of offensive linemen. We didn't have the hard-nosed linebackers, being able to put them in the right position and scheme well. If we were going after a linebacker that was, had Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State and their top, if we're recruiting them in the years past, they're turning on a Miami Hurricanes defense and they're like, I am not going to be put in this situation as a linebacker to where I'm not doing very well, when I could turn on any of these Big Ten schools and they're constantly producing linebackers. Well, now you have a new regime that the Miami Hurricanes are quickly building, to where we are now starting to establish that hard-nosed trench bully football very quickly in the offensive line group. You're seeing the type of recruits, the statures of guys that we're going after, where it's that 6'6", 6'7" build. You look at the defensive line side of the ball, you got plenty of guys that you're going after, whether it's defensive end pass rushers or nose tackle guys, to where you're able to scheme them in different positions. When you have a Charlie Strong, a Coach Steele now on your side of the football, it's going to be a little bit more easier of getting those type of talented guys to alter from a Penn State or Ohio State or a Michigan. And it'll be even easier if you're playing them on a yearly basis and winning against them.
We've got a Discord available. It's basically a huge live chat that's open 24/7, 365. You can talk Canes and college football. Go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV, sign up there. And, of course, get on over to Canes Insight. Follow Brad on Twitter at TejedaBrad, and lock it in there. Brad, we appreciate you making this happen and giving us some insight into the Canes as we get close. It's coming.
It is, man. It is definitely very close. We're only a couple weeks away. Like I mentioned, another scrimmage later today for the Miami Hurricanes. So I hope whatever happens, as long as everyone is injury-free after today and tonight, I am all good. I can't wait to see some of the stats and hear, some of the nuggets coming from the second scrimmage. But, yeah, man, we're only a couple weeks away from that Bethune-Cookman game. And as we know, with recruiting, it changes on a nightly, weekly basis. So make sure you stay tuned on CanesInside.com and also follow me on Twitter to get some updates for that. And go Canes and Ruben Bain to the U, man. I need to see him as a Hurricane. So Ruben Bain to the U.
Good stuff. Brad, we appreciate it so much. You have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Yes, sir. You as well, man.